I know, it's been a while, but I'm back. In this video, I'm going to show you guys how to make a museum-quality Sioux arrow from the Northern Plains. Now, this is going to be based on actual museum examples that I've examined in the Smithsonian and other museums across the country. These are going to be examples that were collected in the mid to late 1800s, so these are going to be as close as possible to the authentic, real thing. Now, I've seen some other videos here on YouTube of guys who have made these videos showing how to make Plains Indian arrows, and they're okay, but it's obvious they've not actually seen the real authentic artifacts. I have. So rest assured that what we produce here is going to be spot on like the original artifacts that are in museums. Let's get into it. Plains Indian arrows were almost always made from hardwood shoots like this one. First, scrape the bark off with a knife. Most Plains arrows had shafts that were between 21 and 25 inches long. Here I'm cutting this one to 23 inches. These expanded and flared nocks were a common feature of Plains Indian arrows, and mine will have the same. Now, one of my favorite tools for reducing the diameter and shaping those hardwood shafts is a farrier's rasp. It's got two sides to it. One has coarse teeth, one has finer teeth. Of course, we're going to use the finer tooth side because we don't want to gouge the shafts. Slowly rotate the shaft with each pass of the rasp to ensure the shaft is round as you reduce its diameter. Got the back end of the arrow shaped. It's a little bit thicker than the rest of the shaft. I'm going to put the knock in first, the actual string groove, then we're going to carve it away to give it that flared knock. Once the string groove is made, I carve away the excess wood so the knock has a flared shape. A fine file then smooths away the carve marks and gives the shaft a smooth, uniform shape. Sandpaper gives it a final smoothing. Boy, that's really looking good now. Got that flared knock in there. The shaft has been sanded. Really straight, looking good. See that groove in the shaft there? Oftentimes they would have 3 of those. And some of them were straight, as in this example. Some of them were wavy, like these. Sometimes they would even zigzag. Sometimes they would be wavy or zigzag for a little bit, then they would go straight the rest of the shaft. I've seen that as well. Those are very common on Plains Indian arrows. So what do we use for that? I use this tool. So this is just a round, essentially like a broomstick. I cut a notch out, and you can see there's a screw. I put a screw in this end, and then it protrudes out into that notch, so you can put this on the shaft and just drag it down the shaft, and it'll create those grooves. Just like the originals. The area where the feathers are placed will be painted. Most were painted with 1 or 2 colors, commonly red, green, or blue. Scrape the quill on both sides with a sharp knife so it thins the quill and makes it easier to split. Then split the feather with the tip of a sharp knife. Wrap the rear of the feathers on with a strand of chewed sinew. Be sure to place the feathers equidistant from each other. Then trim the feather from the front of the quill with sharp scissors. Wrap the front of the feathers down with another strand of chewed sinew. Here I use a fine-tipped wooden applicator to apply hide glue to the underside of each feather. Allow the sinew and glue to dry thoroughly. Now cut a slot into the front of the arrow to accept the metal point. Points like this one were made by blacksmiths and traded to the Indians. They're very common on authentic Plains arrows. Taper the front of the shaft with a file so it looks like this. Now apply hide glue to the base of the point and slide the point into the shaft, then wrap it in place with a strand of chewed sinew. Though not necessary, I'll often add a little hide glue to the sinew bindings just to seal it. Then it's set aside to let the sinew dry. After the glue and sinew is dried, trim the feathers with sharp scissors.
Well, that was a lot of work, but I finally got it finished, and boy, that is a cool looking arrow. Just a really cool looking specimen, and this is exactly like the ones I've seen in museums all across the country. And this is one of the things that made the Plains Indians so feared, was these heavy, stout arrows launched from their short but powerful bows. And you see why they were so feared. Arrows like this were capable of bringing down a 2,000-pound bison with one shot. But it's a lot of work and takes a lot of time to make these things and to make them right. There's a lot of detail involved in replicating something like this. But it's really cool to be able to go into a museum and see examples like this and then recreate them and offer them to the public for their own personal collections. So if you're interested in any museum quality replicas like this and others, check out my website, primitivepathways.com.
Here are some examples of the replicas I make. All of these arrows are exact copies of authentic Plains Indian arrows housed in museums. They represent various tribes like the Cheyenne, Sioux, Pawnee, and Arapaho. Every detail of the original artifacts is copied in these replicas. Any Plains Indian warrior would have been proud to have these in his quiver. If you'd like to own an authentic replica of the real deal, visit my website, primitivepathways.com.